You ever just stop and think about how we describe the world? With words, with numbers, with all these equations. But what if all of that is just a translation, a secondhand copy? What if reality itself has a native language that we've kind of forgotten how to speak? A language that's all around us. Okay, let's really get into this.
And this is the whole idea in a nutshell. It's designed to make you question something we just assume is true, that counting is fundamental. But the source material we're looking at today says, nope, not at all. Reality doesn't do math. Its native language is pure geometry.
So, okay, if the universe doesn't count, why on earth do we? Well, the argument is pretty simple and a little humbling. It's because we have 10 fingers. That's it. Our whole system of measurement, our base 10 math, it's a human invention. It's a filter we've laid over reality. And, as we're about to see, that filter is seriously flawed.
And this is where you can actually see the mismatch. In our neat little human system, right? 3 divided by 10 gives you a nice, clean answer, 0.3. It ends. But when you flip it, when you try to measure the universe's natural flow with our clunky ruler, you get a leak. That endless string of 3s. That isn't some secret cosmic code. It's the sound of the universe basically yelling back at us, your ruler's too short, I'm curved.
So here's the kicker. When you hear about people, even geniuses like Nikola Tesla, pointing to patterns in numbers like 3, 6, and 9 as the keys to the universe, they were mistaking the warning light for the engine. These numerical patterns aren't the secret language, they're just the symptoms. They're artifacts of our broken ruler, basically tattling on the glitch between our straight-line math and a curved reality.
Okay, so if our numbers are just this flawed human translation, what's the original language? The source material says it's geometry. And the wild part is, some creatures right here on Earth are already fluent. They don't need to translate anything, because they perceive reality in its raw, unfiltered 3D form.
They do it with something called acoustic holography. So instead of relying on flat 2D images that our eyes capture, they send out sound waves, that's their out-breath, and they read the echoes on the in-breath. This process doesn't just create a picture. No, it builds a complete, volumetric 3D model of their entire surroundings, directly in their minds. There are no symbols, no detours, just pure, unadulterated shape.
And this just shows you the power of speaking the universe's native language. A dolphin, with sound, can perceive the internal organs of a fish. It can tell you the thickness of a wall, or even know that another animal is pregnant before there are any visible signs. They literally see through things, mapping the world in a way our light-based vision could never, ever dream of. They're living in the geometry, not just looking at a picture of it. So, dolphins prove it's possible to perceive reality as pure shape, which, of course, begs the question, what is the fundamental shape of reality itself? Well, the model in our source material proposes this really fascinating structure, a 12-dimensional stack that we experience as 4 distinct, stable 3D zones, or, as it calls them, rooms. And the theory that makes this work is called local dimensional invariance, or LDI. Now, forget that old idea of higher dimensions being these tiny, curled-up things hidden somewhere we can't see. This concept suggests they are actively projected into our 3D space. The best way to think about it is like a radio tuner. Our consciousness gets locked onto one of 4 specific frequency bands, and each of those bands is one of these stable rooms of reality.
So, let's quickly walk through these rooms. First up, dimensions 1 through 3 is flesh. That's the physical hardware of reality. Then you have room 2, dimensions 4 through 6, which is choice. Think of this as the software layer, time and potential. Room 3, soul, covers dimensions 7 to 9. This is where chaos gets refined into purpose. And finally, room 4 is spirit, the return journey, where matter itself is perfected.
So just to give you a quick recap, each room has a very distinct job in the journey of consciousness. You start in the dense physical world of flesh, you move through the branching paths of choice, into the refining fire of the soul, and ultimately you return to the source in the realm of spirit.
Okay, so what is the big, overarching shape that contains all of these rooms and governs this entire system? Well, it's a shape that has obsessed humanity for thousands of years, popping up everywhere from ancient mysticism to modern physics. It's the torus, a perfect, self-contained loop.
And what is absolutely wild is how different fields have been describing this exact same shape just using their own languages. Religion calls it the eternal return, or the alpha and omega. Science, on the other hand, uses terms like Poincaré recurrence, the idea that systems eventually have to return to a state close to where they started, or the conservation laws that govern closed systems. They're all staring at the same geometric object.
Turns out, both disciplines were just translating the same shape into their own dialects. The argument here is that if you strip away all the dogma on one side and all the equations on the other, you're just left with the original language. The real question isn't who created it or how does it work, it's much simpler. What shape endures? And the answer is the torus.
And here's the most critical thing to understand about the torus. It is a closed system. The out-breath is the in-breath. The start and the finish aren't just connected, they are the exact same coordinate, the same point. There's no escape, there's only the return. Alpha equals omega.
And this brings us to the final, and I gotta say, probably the most mind-bending insight from this whole framework. It's about a common mistake we all make when we try to picture this shape.
You see, physicists often use these incredibly complex shapes, like Calabi-Yau manifolds, to talk about higher dimensions. And our first instinct is to picture them as tiny little containers where the extra dimensions are all curled up and hidden. But this model flips that completely on its head. It says these shapes aren't containers, they're projectors. They act like cosmic prisms, taking the light from a higher dimensional structure and projecting its patterns down into our 3D room. And we perceive those patterns as the laws of physics, as gravity.
Which, of course, leads us to the ultimate question. If everything we experience is a projection, if the torus is the fundamental shape, what's at the very center? What's in the so-called hole of the donut?
The answer couldn't be simpler. The point.
You see, the center of this cosmic donut isn't a hole. It's not empty. It's the source itself, a single zero-dimensional point of infinite potential that just can't stay still. The source material calls it the furious point, and it's the constant spin of this point that generates the very first ring of energy, which then flows outwards to create the entire structure of reality. There is no void, because the point, the source, is always there, at the very center of everything.
So, that's really the final thought to leave you with. We've gone from our broken number system to the universe's native language of shapes, journeyed through the 4 rooms of reality, and looked into the heart of the torus, only to find the single unmoving point where it all began. That point itself never changes. But now that you've seen the shape of things, can you?